Good evening. I'm your host, Chris Lee of Vandy 24/7. And if you're a Vanderbilt basketball fan, you recognize this guy. To my right, he's Will Perdue. He's one of the legendary greats who's played here. He was on hand for Vanderbilt to win over Eastern Kentucky tonight. Will, good to be with you. Thanks for doing the show. Before I hand the mic to you, reminder, we're brought to you our basketball content by the Wash House and our football content by Joe Bulovas of Bulovas Wealth Management. Won't do the full reads tonight because it's a little complicated here. It's a new setup for us. But, hey, just glad we could pull this off. Will, thank you so much for joining us tonight. So after welcoming you, let's get your thoughts on what you saw here tonight and what you've seen through 3 games.
Well, Chris, and thank you for having me and for being flexible and making this happen as we're sitting in an empty Memorial Gymnasium after the game. But, listen, I was impressed with how this team can play.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is that what we've seen through 3 games is they can obviously play up-tempo and prefer to play up-tempo. But at the same time, they can play half court. And I think one of the things that you've seen from this team is that the chemistry seems to be coming together a lot quicker than last year's team. And I think that's the benefit of, bringing back Tanner, bringing back Nickel, bringing back McLaughlin, kind of the core of the guys he was really leaning on in order to make that happen. So I think you'll see the chemistry of this team continue to get better with each game. Listen, we can sit here and talk about the opponent, but at the end of the day, you just play who you're stacked up against.
Yeah.
Obviously, they overpowered Eastern Kentucky, but that's what you wanted to see if they were mentally prepared to do. And I think tonight you saw that, and that's what I liked about their mentality. I was able to go to their practice on Tuesday prior to, tonight's game. And Mark harped on the fact that this team would come out and play fast. This team would play physical. And that's exactly what they did. And I thought Vanderbilt was ready. They actually paid attention to the scouting report. And they missed a couple shots, but they settled down and then took control of the game early. And that's what I wanted to see. They took it seriously, kind of put Eastern away, but also at the same time, were able to work on different things throughout the game. Remember, this is a process now to get this team ready for SEC play. And I think now as we get deeper in, maybe not so much Saturday's game, but when they get down to the Bahamas, I think that's when they'll truly be tested.
Excuse me, the distraction here is me scrolling my phone. I usually got all kinds of stuff in front of me at home, TV monitors, my screen. I'm having to go off the phone to get some stuff. You mentioned chemistry. Mark Byington mentioned in the press conference after the game how good this team's chemistry is. I asked him a question about selecting stuff in the recruiting process. He said they're looking for guys who want to win. He said finding guys who score points but are happy they score points in a loss is not what he was looking for. You just get the sense in listening to him speak how pleased he is with the guys he's got. And look, 5 guys in double figures tonight. He's got a lot of guys who can really play, but seem also content to share the basketball. And I think that's what potentially makes him special.
Yeah, I did not see the Lipscomb game and then didn't miss much, one big. But I did watch the UCF game from start to finish and obviously was present tonight, right? We saw how well they played in that first half against Central Florida. Kind of took their foot off the gas and paid the price. Still won the game, but they had to play a lot harder than they really needed to in that second half. But again, a good test. As you talked about from the chemistry aspect and what I saw in practice on Tuesday, the communication between the guys during dead ball situations, the willingness to make the extra pass to find not just the open shot, but the better shot, right? And also, the aggression to attack the basket and then spray the ball out. That's the style everybody wants to play, right? Get up numerous threes. But I also thought that what I saw tonight that impressed me was that when guys had layups, they took them. They didn't necessarily pass up wide open layups to try to hopefully maybe get a 3. They took the easy bucket. They took what the defense gave them. And when the guards were able to turn the corner and get to the rim, they took the shot or got to the free throw line. And that's what I like to see, is also making good, smart decisions. It drives me crazy when you see a lot of these guys, they do all this work to get themselves to the rim, And then all of a sudden, when they're at the rim, they decide, well, maybe I should kick it out for a wide open three. But at the same time, just take the layup, right? Take what you're given, play easy basketball. Don't make things difficult for you. And I think that's one of the things that Mark's, hammered home to these guys about how you play. Make it easy on yourselves. Yes, we're good, but take what's given. Take the easy bucket. Continue to. And the other thing I saw tonight was I really like what they're doing on the defensive end as far as how they communicate, how they talk, amongst themselves. The coaches were yelling about how you're seeing them trying to get over screens and not just settle for switching screens. And I like that philosophy because I think sometimes guys get a little lazy when you try to just switch screens. But when you make that extra effort to try to get over the top, it just makes it that much more difficult for an opponent in their offense to really run and try to get from one side of the floor to the other.
Yeah, you mentioned getting to the rim. I think one thing that stood out to me is I thought, like, they had 3-point guards, if you consider Duke Miles one. He's really a combo guard, but they had a brief spell tonight where they were all in there together. You saw Tyler Tanner's dunk in the second half, probably the highlight. Yeah, didn't know he had that in him.
The young fellow surprised himself a little bit there.
Devin McLaughlin's reaction on that play was priceless. But I thought that Collins was good tonight. You're starting to see what they really saw in him after, maybe didn't see it as much in the opener, but their guards were so good at getting to the rack. And Mark Byington talked after the game in the press conference. He said, I think he said in the UCF game, we were 8 of 12 on threes after we got a guy in the paint and then kicked out. And to me, the versatility of the offense, I'll buy time for you a minute while you're circling or underlining. No, that's okay. We're both doing the same thing. We're both kind of prepping on the fly here. But I thought that really stood out. Like, they could get to the rack for layups. They could kick it out. And man, they just have so many options. They're going to be so hard to defend. Well, even when they go to the bench, I don't think there's a lot of let up after their first 8-9 guys or whatever that number would be. And maybe another one when Nicholson gets back. We'll hit that in a minute, because that is the one thing they're kind of missing is a little bit more defensive presence in the post. Mark did call that out tonight, but yeah, I noticed it too. They're so good at getting to the paint and making stuff happen one way or another.
Well, when you look at this roster, I also think this roster this year was put together much better than last year's roster, right? I think Mark and his coaching staff have done an excellent job of identifying the talent that they need to play the system that Mark really wants to play, right? So that makes things a little easier on him. But as you talked about with Frankie Collins, Duke Miles, Tyler Tanner, that is an outstanding 3-guard rotation. But you also talked about he has that luxury to play all 3 of those guys at once if he liked. And now what that does, in my opinion, was you don't have to necessarily have a single ball handler. You have ball handlers, plural, not just a primary ball handler, which then makes it a lot easier to push the ball down the floor, right? And also handle the pressure, because regardless of the score, 92-62, the one thing that you can talk about is that Eastern pushes up the floor. They're aggressive. They press. So that tested these guys about their ability to kind of handle the pressure, handle the ball. I thought occasionally got to get a little loose with it, but it was all said and done. They didn't have too many unforced errors, right? But just the luxury of having that 3-guard lineup. And, to me in this game, 2 guys really stood out. And you talked about it. I thought Duke Miles played really well. Yeah. And the one thing he does, in my opinion, probably better than a lot of people guards his size, is he moves very well without the ball to get himself open. And not only does he get himself open, he gets himself open to where his teammates can find him. It's one thing to get open and stand somewhere where your teammates can't get you the basketball, but communicating with your teammates vocally to let them know where you are so they can get you the pass because you are open is a skill set. But, the guy that probably surprised me the most, because when I saw him in practice, I love how hard he plays, but he played really well, in my opinion, and coming off the bench is Tyler Harris. That's a luxury that Mark has. And probably the best thing about him is that guy can play numerous positions, right? Yeah. And I think that's also the thing that he didn't have last year, was that guy that could play, briefly in the post on the defensive end, but most notably has length and can guard guys out on the perimeter. and also get a hand up on shots because, he's 6'7" with long arms. And that's what the thing I loved about him. Now, what I don't, and I know I'm going to butcher this, right? But just call him AK. Yeah. Is that what everybody calls him?
I think it's a Cherokee.
Yeah.
I'm not 100%.
But he also is another big, right? As you're talking about a guy that's 6'7", that can guard some guys on the perimeter. He's got really good footwork, but because of his size, has the bulk to kind of go down in the post if you really want to go small. It's kind of push some guys around. Now, what happens when you deal with that? As you saw in the UCF game when he went small, they got killed on the boards. So that's where now you have to be a little more alert mentally, knowing that all 5 guys, you hear the term, he's got a gang rebound. But they've had some good tests. They've answered those tests. And as you move forward, they're going to continue to get better. But as you talked about, we both have touched on the chemistry aspect, but also the depth. And I'm not so sure that he's set on this starting lineup that he has at the moment. And he's kind of tinkering that. But the main goal here is to get not only him, but get these players comfortable, figure out who plays best with whom, and get these guys ready for when the SEC conference play starts.
The depth is what's really starting to pop to me. I think they've got 7 or 8 guys that would start for just about any Vanderbilt team over the last 15 years, probably any team. Like, I think there's kids on this team that are this year that might have started a year ago. You're already seeing Nicholson's been out. And although the better part of their depth isn't in the post, like, that's another piece they have. Like, when he comes back, he was the most effective shot blocker at his previous stop of anybody on this team. So, and that's where chemistry again comes in, keeping these guys happy. But that's what pops to me is so many really, really good players on this team.
It really is. And you think about it now is that's one of the things we've constantly talked about, right? Is when you look at a team that should be successful at Vanderbilt, it should be men's and women's basketball, right? Because unlike football, that's very successful at the moment, you don't need 90 guys, right? You basically need 14. And of those 14, you need three really good guys if you really, truly want to give yourself an honest chance at being a contender. And not just a contender in the SEC, but being a team that maybe somebody looks at as, if they get hot at the right time, can make a run in the NCAA tournament. And I think that's what he does have. Again, it's only the 3rd game. Still got plenty of practice time left, but I also like the organization and the progress that he makes with practice. Mm-hmm. And not only is it Mark, it's also, Rick Ray, John Crimmins, Xavier Joyner, all these guys, Banger and Buckland. They're doing a good job of, and Mark talked about this in the offseason, of now getting these guys and working with them, building them up, making them better, getting them to the next level. When I say the next level is now SEC ready. Yeah. And I know that this team, the league as a whole, I think is better than it was last year, which is it's just unheard of. Yeah. Because as good as the league was last year, I think it is better this year, because not only does Vanderbilt have better players and better depth, but so does Arkansas. Now, I know Kentucky lost last night, but they're better than what they saw in that game there. But, let's go down the road to Knoxville and Tennessee. So, it's going to be exciting once you get to the SEC again, because you can't afford to have an off night. And that's where now you talk about that depth truly comes into play is who's going to be the guy that steps up big on any given night coming off that bench. And now I think they have more talent than they've had in the past, where it's not, kind of like a crapshoot. It's like, hey, we believe that we have guys coming off the bench, as you talked about, that could possibly start in other schools, but we're fortunate enough to have them here. So we know if we have a guy that's getting some foul trouble, like Nick will pick up his 3rd foul. It's not really concerning against Eastern Kentucky, but if that happens against Tennessee or Alabama or Arkansas or Kentucky, that's a worry. But now not as much, because of the depth that they have and the talent that they have coming off the bench.
Yeah, I think the coaching staff has done a tremendous job. They don't look like a team that's playing its 3rd game in the middle of November. I mean, they're a lot much further along. Maybe some of that's being old, but still you have to play together, which they haven't done for all that long. I mean, you've only got 3 guys that really play a role that were here a year ago. That's one thing. The other thing too is, like, they were a 28.5 point favorite tonight. They won by 30, so they took care of business. But Eastern's a team that has really pressed. They've led the country in steals before. they got after Vanderbilt tonight, full court. That was the type of matchup that if you don't bring your A game, I remember Auburn, a week ago opened with Bethune, got taken to overtime. And this was the type of opponent that, had they not come focused and sharp, could have looked a little different in the second half.
Well, they could have made things a lot harder for themselves when it was really unnecessary, because that was the added drama in the second half of that UCF game. So I think they learned from that lesson. But I think one of the things that we need to focus on with this team, because this team is under some scrutiny, under some pressure, because of what Mark was able to do last year with that team, meaning he was in a position to where he took his first year at Vanderbilt, he basically turned the program around through the portal and got to the NCAA tournament. So again, you have that expectation hanging over these guys' heads. But I think one thing that sometimes doesn't necessarily show up in the box score, and we talk about, is chemistry, but also it's the ability of guys to kind of get along and respect one another. You don't necessarily have to like, a teammate per se, like personally, like, I don't really hang out with that guy. That's okay. But if you have the respect because you understand what that player's skill set is and you respect that. And I think these guys, and this is the hard sell for a coach like, Byington, especially these days with the transfer portal, right? You can sometimes go get a very talented team, but yet when the team doesn't fit together, you're not going to get the desired results, right? And I think maybe there might have been a little bit of that last year. It just, you had a lot of talent, but just the pieces didn't stick together. It's like a game of Tetris, right? You just couldn't quite figure out the equation because you just don't have a lot of time. But I think they've also done a better job when they went out and recruited these guys out of the portal. Took a little more time to get to know who these players were. Learn a little bit more about their personality, their beliefs, what they like, what they dislike, to see if they would fit a little better. Now, that being said, also a little more talented. But I think one of the things that we haven't even mentioned now, we mentioned Tyler about being part of that guard lineup, but also his significant improvement, I think, is indicative of how much work the coaches have put in with these guys to coach them up, right? And that's the other thing that Mark talked about over the summer when they brought in Nicholson, from Jacksonville State. He didn't use the word project. He said the guy's got a good base, but we really need to get him better. We need to coach him up. And this is a guy that we're hoping in the second half of the SEC season can adapt to the speed and the pace of the SEC conference and be able to make that step. Yeah, I don't want to say, again, I'm using the word project from an aspect of he's already an established player at Jacksonville State, but not in SEC play. It's gonna be a little punch in the gut. But the question is how quickly can he adapt? And as Mark talked about, as they continue to coach him up and work with him in practice, I know he's been injured. I came to practice on Tuesday. Unfortunately, he had to do a lot of his stuff on his own on the side, but he is putting in the time and he is putting the effort, doing what he can do because of the injury. So the sooner the better as far as getting him back. But it's more about what can he do in the second half of that SEC season to help them kind of lock down the paint and protect the rim.
Yeah, I remember you and I talked, I think before last season, and like one thing that really impressed me about Mark was they got after it. They didn't say, "Hey, we've been crappy for a few years." He said, "No, we're going to win now," and they got to the NCAA tournament. I mean, last year was a very successful season, but I think there was also, you and I talked before the season, an aspect to last year where they had to take guys that had talent. Whether or not the chemistry all worked together was going to be a question. And I think that there were some, not naming names, I think people could guess. There was a me guy or two on last year's team. I don't think that comes as any surprise to people that watch the games, but I don't sense that with this roster. They're 3-0. Everybody's happy. They have 3 pretty lopsided wins. And so let's time will tell, right? I don't want to jump the gun, but that stands out to me is like, okay, that's the thing, that because you had success in year one, you had proof of concept that this is a fun offense to play in. Maybe you could be a little more picky and choosy with not just taking talented guys, but guys that fit what you were looking for with the chemistry thing.
Yeah, but also by winning last year and getting to the tournament, they can be a little more picky.
Because the caliber guy you can go after.
That is correct. And, people like and see what Mark does. And now all of a sudden they're like, hey, that Vanderbilt, I'd like to go play in that system. They're now winning again. This is what it's about. I understand it was 1 year, but that's the expectations. But from a chemistry standpoint, but also the other thing that we're not talking about is leadership. Probably the most impressive thing I saw once the game was kind of in hand, and you saw that, Jaden Leverett, the young center that they got out of high school, the 6'11" kid, he's got a great body.
Yes.
He's raw, right? I kind of joke sometimes when you see guys like that, they're kind of like a giraffe on ice skates, right? But
that's that you know anything about that, right?
That's correct.
Right.
I've been there, done that. But what I love, though, was there was an incident on the offensive end where he didn't really make a mistake, but something happened and the ball went out of bounds. The Commodores maintained possession. But what I like is when Frankie Collins went over to him and talked to him and said something to him and tapped him on the chest. And I was fortunate enough that I was in a really good seat tonight and I could kind of hear what they were talking about. He was giving him positive feedback, talking about, hey, watch the ball into your hands, slow down, don't be in such a hurry. But just, talking, the game's out of hand. He couldn't have said anything.
Yeah.
They could have joked about it and given him a hard time. But it was also the recognition of Frankie Collins that, hey, why, Jaden's out there. Let's get him the necessary work that he needs, but also to make sure he takes his time seriously to get in there and get some experience. And I'd love to see that because, again, I don't want to say last year's team was missing some leadership, but I also think this team already, as you talked about, they look really good for only playing 3 games.
Yeah.
And I know you were able to bring these guys in and get them on campus this summer, but I think they made good use of their practice time this summer. And these guys have a genuine like for one another as far as how you see them communicate. Like the practice was over here at Memorial, so they had to walk over from Huber, right? But you see them walking over together. They're laughing, they're joking, and they've got to go on the road one time. But also, I think one of the things that Mark really did that nobody's talking about, he did some team bonding stuff with this group. And I forget where they went this summer. But Vegas, my guy Robert Sampson's whispering in my ear, when they went to Vegas, just something little like when they were together, he made them put their phones down and spend time together, right? They weren't allowed to just hang out in their rooms and play video games and talk on the phone. He made them do stuff together so they would get to know each other, right? He forced them to spend time together. And I think that's really important, in this day and age because of, electronics. A lot of kids don't do that. Their form of communication is while they're playing video games, right? Even though the other kid might be in the room right next door,
yeah,
right? But doing stuff like that, I think, has had a really significant impact on this team and help them get to where they are so quickly.
Yeah.
Now, I think they're playing great. The fact that it's been Lipscomb, the fact that it's been Eastern Kentucky, it'll be Arkansas, Pine Bluff. Nobody's going to really look at these wins and say, oh, that's impressive. But when you get here and you look at them and do the eye test, then you'll be more impressed than maybe watching them on TV, watching clips online, and seeing how good this team is at the moment and how good this team, I personally think, can be, even though, you're going to be duking it out in the SEC.
Yeah. By the way, if you got questions or comments, get them in the chats. I think that the night is drawing a stranger audience. We've got some people that may not be basketball fans in the chat, but hey, there's almost 300 of you watching right now. So I know there are some fans out there, but you said something. I wouldn't grab your stat sheet because I don't even look at classes anymore because what does it matter?
It's insignificant.
Right. In terms of how much have you got left, but where it is significant is age. And you look at this, because I'm just thinking like Frankie Collins is an older player, and that was an older player thing to do. Collins, graduate student. Miles, grad student. Tyler Nichols, senior. Akeo Karaki, grad. Jalen Washington, senior. Miles Keefe, doesn't play much, but senior. Mason Nicholson, grad. Devin McLaughlin, senior. Like, that's an old bunch. And I think that could go a long way in getting them where they need to be.
Well, I think then that kind of now goes back to, with the transfer portal, it makes it difficult to keep, kids, right? Because they all want to put their name in the portal every year, right? What's my value? How much money can I make? Right? I mean, think about it. Saban talked about that, this whole portal thing. When kids are talking more about how much money they're making instead of talking about how distraught they are over a loss, that's when he talked about he had to get out, right? Because that's not what I'm part of. And it wasn't necessarily the money thing. It was just what the kids thought was important. I think Mark has done a nice job of, spending wisely, right? But also bringing in now, because they have the ability to have a wider width of choices, because he got into the game so late last year. He did a good job, but now he was able to kind of, even him, going from a smaller conference to the SEC, right? Kind of getting that belief that, hey, my system can work, right? How I want to play can work in the SEC. So that's given him even a little more confidence. So I think you're seeing that across the board. And again, we're just trying to work on building ourselves, preparing for SEC play. I am anxious to see these guys go out to the Bahamas because I think it would be important for any team, quite honestly. Sometimes you say, well, that game was more important for one team than the other. And there's a lot of truth to that statement. But I think now when you talk about being able to put these teams together, the number of new faces, right? Going out and winning a tournament will do a lot for their confidence, but it'll also do a lot for Mark's confidence as far as him having the belief that, hey, I'm getting across to these guys and these guys are listening. These guys are buying in. And it's, the proof is in the pudding about how we're winning games and as the opponents and the quality of the opponents get better.
One more thing, two more things. A.W. Hamilton, Eastern's coach, we had a few minutes with him tonight. He was asked about George Kimball, who transferred from Eastern Kentucky, was on A.W.'s team a year ago, now redshirting for Vanderbilt as he sits out with an injury. Raved about the kind of kid he is. Said he was, maybe leading the country in steals when he got hurt a year ago, or close to it. So said he's a great fit. A.W. Hamilton said he and Byington are friends. He said, I don't know why I keep playing him, but he said he talked to Mark about Kimball, said he'll be a great fit here. So wanted to mention that. The other thing, and as I'm going to go scrambling for the mailbag, Mark Byington brought this up tonight. He said attendance has got to get better. We know about Memorial Magic and what it can be, but we've got to have more people in the stands. And he referenced Shea Ralph saying it too the night before. The only thing that's been disappointing about the season so far is the crowd. And like you and I harped on it for years, like you cannot neglect the fan base for as long as Vanderbilt did and not make, an equal effort or greater to bring them back. I think Mark and those guys are doing their part. They're putting an entertaining product out there, but I think fans have just gotten out of the habit of going to games. What do you do to build that back other than what the team can do? And while you're doing that, I'm going to look up the mailbag and pick out a few questions for us to get to.
And listen, I'm honest that I love the fact that Mark brought that up. Nobody asked him about the fans, right? Because you were at the press conference. He brought that up, and rightfully so. I mean, when I walked in tonight, like I said, I was fortunate enough to have some really good seats, but I was just really disappointed in the attendance. Again, you could talk about, well, it was just Eastern, but that's not the point. You're not coming for the opponent. You're coming for this team. And I understand that there is some validity to the fact that, because of the amount of turnover, it's hard to just, align with these guys. Well, how about you take some time to show up at the games and try to get a chance to know these guys? Because, I love the product that they put on the floor, right? And then when the game is over, the students that did come probably was more disappointed in the student section than anything. Yeah. Because all they got to do is walk across the street and the ticket's free. Yeah. Right. So it's a Wednesday night. Listen, I used to go to Vanderbilt. Things don't start happening until Thursday night.
You would have at a game like this when you played 12, 13,000 maybe?
Yeah, but that was also, of all the groundwork that CM laid.
Right.
Think about when I got here as a freshman, we were a 500 team. But yet, as you pointed out, we were playing in front of, it was sold out a lot of times. Right. So these kids put in the effort and they work hard. So I think that there's what Mark complained about is valid, right? You need to get out here and support this team. This is a really good team.
Yeah.
And I understand everybody will start coming when it's SEC play time and the quality of the opponent gets better. But this is an opportunity for you to come out and see this team. What I loved is at the end of the game, after this team walked through the student section of the students that were here and slapped five with everybody, they went down. Mark talked to them. And then these kids came up and they signed autographs for all these kids that were waited for them over by the tunnel, right? You didn't used to see that. But that's even this team trying to go the extra effort and reward those that did come. And the kids that are here, they were signing basketballs, jerseys, hats. They could have just gone out the back exit and gone home, but they wanted to reward those that did come. So I implore you, Marcus did it in his press conference, start showing up for these kids. They deserve it. I think you'll enjoy the product. You'll get to know this team, and you'll feel a lot more comfortable about how successful this team's going to be once they do start SEC play in January.
I'm going to get into the mailbag, which is presented by our friends at Sutherland and Belk. And I think we've hit some of the content in the questions, so I'll pick out the ones where we've not done that. Go Doors 1995 said it was cool seeing you in the stands tonight, by the way. Okay, Door 1997, obviously our competition level has not been great, but our team looks incredible against them. Is it fool's gold, or can this be a special team?
First of all, I don't think it's fool's gold. So I appreciate the question. When I hear the term special, I think about a team that's, Final Four quality. That's what I determine as special. I think this team has the talent to get to that point. Okay. And as he talks about, it's Lipscomb, UCF, before it's all said and done, depending on how they play in the Big 12, could end up being a quad one win by the end of the year. It's not right now, but it could be, right? So that's kind of a wait and see. But when you play Lipscomb, you're supposed to do what you do, bury them. When you play Eastern Kentucky, you're supposed to do what you do, win by 30. Because you said that the spread was 28.5. Mm-hmm. So I think this team is very talented. I do not think it's fool's gold. I think this team is going to do more than just compete. Even though they made the NCAA tournament last year, Mark wasn't happy. He thought he talked to me about how he thought he could have done a better job, right? So he learned a lot off of last year that I think he's implementing this year. But because of the chemistry factor that we talked about earlier in the podcast, because of the care factor of this group of kids, because of the unselfishness of this group, and I think them understanding the definition of sacrifice. I'll give up a few more points or assists or rebounds. I'll do a better job on defense to help my friends so they know they can trust me and I have their back. That this team will be able to have the ability to be special, okay? If this team goes to the NCAA tournament and then loses in the first round, I'm going to be very disappointed because they have too much talent to only go that far. I truly do believe that. Like I said, I came to practice. I saw how hard they work. They take pride in their work. I saw how competitive they were the day before a game. They weren't just going through the motions. Now, I know they kind of got knocked back on their feet a little bit because of the aggression and the intensity at which Eastern played, but they adapted quickly, right? And then to take this full circle, love how they came out against UCF. They took them seriously. They were ready to play, specifically on the road, and knocked them back, right? You always want a team to be the team that, gives the first punch, knocks their opponent back, forces them to react. In my opinion, they've done that in 2 of the 3, but in the third one tonight, they adapted quickly, right? Knocked down some shots, but at the end of the day, as we talk about, threes are such a big part of the game, but I love the fact that they didn't settle for threes tonight. The threes they took, I thought, were threes that came from initially was a good look to a better look, and they did a nice job. What did they end up shooting? 38% from three. At one point, they were shooting almost 50%, but I think that they shot 37, 38%. And I think that's kind of where this team's going to be, right? And what I also like is that this team and the guys that did return addressed their weaknesses. Tyler Nickel has addressed being more consistent. I think he started out more consistent than last year. So, they've checked all the boxes early. It's just that taking those baby steps of getting better every night.
All right, let's find the next one here. Okay, let's see. Okay, where's the one I was looking for? Okay, Door 1997, small sample size, but what players have most exceeded your expectations so far?
Yeah, I'll start, obviously, with Tyler Tanner. Had a great freshman year, right? Really needed to work on his shot. I really love how his shot looks right now, especially the quickness of the release and his ability to go from a crossover dribble to shooting the basketball. It's just really difficult for the defense to react, right? Yeah. I just don't understand. This guy is unbelievable he just has a nose for the basketball on defense. How many steals did he have tonight in that situation? Yeah, I mean, his ability and then deflections and his help defense is spectacular. I mean, the guy really understands how to play the game. I knew he had the basketball IQ just by watching him play last year as a freshman. But now you've seen him. He's gotten a little bigger, a little faster. His shot is better. It's more reliable. He's one of those guys you got to have him on the floor. So now, Mark's in a position to where he's got to figure out, hey, where can I give him them spot minutes to get a blow? Because there's no doubt how much better the team is when he's on the floor, specifically on the defensive end. And I was really impressed, as I talked about early on, with what I saw from Tyler Harris. His versatility, his ability to play numerous positions, has three-point range. On defense, you have to account for that, but also the length to put it on the floor and attack the rim. But also what probably is more impressive and really helps what Mark wants to do is guard numerous positions, numerous players, the smaller player, the bigger player, which, makes him kind of like, a Swiss Army knife, can do a little bit of everything.
Yeah, and I feel like to have a few of those type guys on this team too. I mean, particularly the guards. I mean, a Duke Miles, like all the stuff he can do is just that's a real big piece to have.
And I think right now, I'm glad you brought that up because, I did mention, I liked what I saw the night in the game with Duke Miles, but I think also his ability to handle the ball, run the team. Then you got Frankie Collins. I mean, it was kind of across the board that I was impressed with what I saw. It wasn't like I was sitting here going, man, this team needs a lot of work.
Yeah.
And I caught myself saying that early on about last year's team, but they put in the work to get where they got in the SEC tournament with huge wins throughout the season. But that's where I think this team right now, after 3 games, is miles ahead of last year's team. And not just from a talent standpoint, but just how they're playing and how they're figuring things out. And a lot of that has to do with what, Mark, as I talked about, going to Vegas and just, forcing these guys to spend time together, learn about each other, start to care about each other. And that bleeds over onto the floor when they play for each other.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, just so many parts. And last year's team it had limitations. And I think they got, in the end, the most out of it that they could for the most part. Like I thought when they saw St. Mary's, it's like, that's not the greatest matchup for them. And they held in and they led it for most of the game. And then the dam kind of burst and there wasn't much they could do about it. Especially, I think there was some foul trouble. And I think this is what sets this question up because I think this is the $1 million question. Open Doors 5. How will the squad size up against SEC level big men? I mean, that is my only just glaring concern at this point. I'm sure there will be more, but that's the one that, I would name 10 times before I could find the next one on the list.
And that's always going to be a question because big men have a tendency to mature and adapt slower than guards. Okay. But the one thing that I do like is, Jalen Washington tonight didn't have the best game, but I like his athleticism. I like his size. I like his ability to run the floor. I thought he played really well in the UCF game. I think they're going to be leaning on him heavily. Like I said, it's, like you talked about, Nicholson's hurt, right? He's 6'10", 280. He's that girth that you need to kind of clog up the lane. But again, we got to be patient with him and give him some time, because I think what you're going to see with him is he's going to have a good game, but he may not be able to follow up that good game with another good game, right? It may be good game, not as good as the last game, but then another good game as he comes and tries to figure it out, because he's going to have to get quicker as far as with his footwork. And that's what I was talking about. You're going to lean heavily on Jalen Washington. But again, Okirky, however you say his name, and I apologize for butchering it, he's going to be important too. He might have to play a little undersized at times, but I think he has the body and the strength in order to do that. And again, McLaughlin, he's going to be so important on the boards. I think it was the Auburn game I came to last year where he dominated, and that might have been his best game of the season. But we're going to need more from him, like that Auburn game last year, consistently, in my opinion, for this team to really reach, the level of expectations that they have for themselves, but a lot of the fans have for him as well. And I think they can get there. But to kind of wrap it up in a bow, the good thing about this team is, because of the talent level, they have more room for error than last year's team, meaning they cannot play to their best, not necessarily have their A game, but still win games. I don't think they had that luxury last year.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt. I was thinking as you were saying that, like, McLaughlin had to play a couple of stations above his ability last year. I mean, they don't have to be outstanding in the post. They just have to be able to get through a game without, having all three of those guys in foul trouble if Nicholson is kind of what people thought he was in practice. So I think they've got some luxuries. And even you can use an Okirky, you can use, a nickel in spots to get some minutes there at the 4. It's not ideal, but there is some flexibility that at least makes it an option. So 2 more questions and I'll get you out of here, and me too. Midge VU wants to know who would win a game of horse between Barry Goheen, Charles Mays, Barry Booker, Scott Droud, and Derek Wilcox. By the way, got to meet Barry Goheen, I think, for the first time in person tonight, which was really neat. A guy that I grew up watching. So, I don't know if the answer varies now as opposed to what it was when those guys played, but
I think the answer is still the same. Scott Droud.
Really? Okay.
I mean, he was the best shooter.
Okay.
Bar none. Okay. Everybody knows about Goheen's heroics, 7 or 8 game-winning shots in his Vanderbilt career, right? But our best shooter was Scott Droud. And when you talk about a horse game, my money's on him.
Yeah.
Period. I mean, listen, all those guys would make it interesting, because all those guys could shoot with Goheen, Mays. I think Booker was a better shooter than people really know, as was Derek Wilcox. But I think Scott Droud was the best overall shooter. He kind of was the true definition of the bomb squad because of the depth. Remember on the sideline here where we are, right? There was a star over there where it used to say Commodores, out of bounds, right? Droud could stand, and that's, 30 feet? Droud could stand on that star that was out of bounds, and I'd sit here and watch him make 10 in a row, right? And with ease. You got to remember that guy led the state of Kentucky in scoring 2 years in a row, right? It's just, that's how good of a shooter he was.
Yeah. Those other guys, other than Wilcox, were all a few inches taller, which in horse, nobody's guarding you. So I didn't really think about that element, but that makes sense now. Last one, Vandy fan 1233. Where are we with the new initiative, and what percentage of your goal have we met so far? That, of course, the Nashville Basketball Initiative, of which you founded and are part of. And by the way, again, we're going to be doing this a lot this year, I hope, pending your schedule. I know we both have good intentions. Sometimes life gets in the way, but I think we'll pull off something on a fairly regular basis. And I think part of that is going to be promoting that and maybe even doing some stuff in person with our abundant free time. I say that sarcastically.
Tongue in cheek, but listen, it's been an uphill battle with the Nashville Basketball Initiative over the last probably 3 to 6 weeks. We've really made some serious headway. The main thing we had to do from the beginning was start to build relationships, and that was the hard part. I didn't feel comfortable just kind of running like a bull in a china shop and just asking for money. I didn't think that was appropriate. I didn't think that was the way to do it. What we're trying to do is sell a belief and bring in those people that believe in what Vanderbilt basketball can be and what it used to be like here at Memorial Gymnasium, right? It was must watch television.
Yeah.
And I think Mark's doing a better job of now, as we just talked about, talent. This team is much more talented than last year. So what we're trying to do, and for those that are like, it's called the Nashville Basketball Initiative. And the way the rules are slated right now, Vanderbilt, just like any other university, is responsible for raising the money for rev share, right? And revenue share is divided up 75% for football, 15% for men's basketball, and then the last 10% goes to baseball, women's basketball, and some other ancillary sports, right? So basically 15% of what ends up being 18 million is about 2.75. Give or take, this year's team probably has, I don't know. I mean, I don't know exactly, honestly, but it's somewhere between 6 and 8 million, right, for the payroll for this team. And there's probably going to be a little bit of a decrease, but the average team in the SEC is anywhere between 6 and 10. And I think people will be surprised how many teams are actually at the 10 million mark, right? So Vanderbilt's respectable, but we got to do better. And that's what the Nashville Basketball Initiative is about, is the school now is responsible for revenue share, but anything above and beyond that 2.7 has to be a third-party initiative. And that's what the National Basketball Initiative is a third-party initiative. We now have people standing up that are comfortable with what we're doing. They understand what we're doing. They like what Mark is doing. We're all getting our ducks in a row. And they've now said, how can I help? What do you need me to do? Obviously we're talking about financial commitment, but now we also have a better network of individuals and businesses now that are learning about what we're doing. And now we're starting getting a return on our investment. Honestly, it's hard for me to say where we are because I really have not put a ceiling on this whatsoever. Yeah. I have a goal of being able to help Mark make that difference up over and beyond 2.7. So is that 2.3 to get him to 5, 3.3 to get him to 6? Depends on what he needs and what he has access to, right? So I can't sit here and say we're 20% of the way, we're 5% of the way, we're 50% of the way. We're now finally in the stage where we're starting to reach out and ask people to donate. We were more concerned about cultivating relationships first and foremost, making friendships with businesses, individuals. But the biggest thing we've done now is gone out in the community now and I think we all can admit there's a lot of money in Nashville.
Yes.
But finding the best way to make that money last, but also develop those relationships that will last and find those individuals that are passionate about Vanderbilt and Vanderbilt athletics as well. In this case, specifically basketball. And now we're doing that and we're hitting those targets.
Yeah. And like, you haven't taken a penny from it. I'm not taking a penny to help you with this, but I was just excited because it's been interesting for me, growing up and watching you play and people and then you get to meet people and like you and I've got to be friends and you really find out that all that stuff aside, you like a lot of the people that you get to meet and know later. And I think there's never been really a way to connect the fans and the people they rooted for. And I think that's the part that I've really been excited. I don't have a lot of time, but neither do you, but it was worth it to me to try to do something. You've always got this list of stuff in your head, like, man, it would be cool if you could do this or that. And I've had that mental list for a while. And I thought kind of being able to be a connecting point.
You mean this list?
Yeah, that list that looks a lot like that.
I'm old school. I still like to write everything down.
Right. Well, I'm impressed with the penmanship. That's really well done.
Well, I initially was in engineering, and some of my best classes were the drafting class, right? So that's where I've learned. And that's the other compliment I get is that when people ask for my autograph and I hand it back, they're like, wow, I can actually read that.
Right.
But I think you made a valid point. And one of the things we did tonight before this game is we had a social event over at the Marriott, right? Just kind of impromptu put that together. But we're also trying to bring back the former players.
Yes.
You know, there's even been some apathy that's set in with them as well, right? So we had Brian Osmiller. We had Dale Clayton, who's the coach that recruited me, lives here in Nashville, right? He came. Steve Reese, Barry Goheen, Barry Booker, Robert, he's on the side here. Who else was here tonight that we were talking to? I mean, we had a good turnout of former players that were at the game that we got together beforehand, but also, you know, made it a point to talk to them as well to kind of get this thing going and rolling and put everything in a position to make this happen. Because we got to be able to get the players back together as well. Because as you talked about, when you can come to these events, come to the Vandy game, and you see players at the game, that's kind of a reminder of what type of relationships you developed with these guys during the time frame when you do play, right? And there you go. Also, Mike Rhodes, you know, I forgot about that. But also, even we have some managers that were here tonight. So it's just, we're trying to bring them back into the fold as well. It's just not like, hey, we're out there talking to the alumni, you know, asking for money. We're also trying to develop something that we used to have, was that camaraderie amongst former players. And we're trying to get that back as well. So, you know, it's a multi-platform process with the Nashville Basketball Initiative. It's just not about raising money. That's an important part. But getting former players back into the fold, getting them back into the gym to support Mark as well.
Yeah, and you and I did podcasts. What was it? Maybe 3 years ago. We were doing them for a while. Then it just got to the point like, what's the point? And then we got busy, and then last year was good. And you know, we've been intentional about carving out time, and I think we will. But there hasn't been much to celebrate for a while. And okay, maybe it's not Kentucky's tradition or Louisville's, but it's yours, and it matters to the people that watch games here and played. And there've been some great moments, and so I think that's been the neat thing, is maybe being able to bring people together and have some fun with what suddenly is a fun product to watch. It looks like, you know, as we sit 3 games into the season.
Yep. And I think it's just slowly chip away at, you know, getting this back to what it was, right? And, you know, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Drew Maddox. He's been a big part of this.
Another big one, Shane Foster.
And Shane was actually doing the broadcast for ESPN Plus. So, you know, it's just, we're not, it's kind of feel like a salesman. We're knocking on doors, right? Trying to get our foot in the door, trying to get people back into the mix. But it's about alumni and former players as well, and kind of get that happy medium between the two, so that, and it's not just about reliving, right, the good old times. It's about putting Mark in a position to succeed, but also letting Mark know that we do care, because I want him to stay here. Yeah. I want him to be here. I know he wants to be here, and I know he thinks and has proven that he can win here. But at the same time, it's our responsibility, right, to put him in that position to succeed as well. Because the one thing that you see here, when a coach wins here, other schools call. Other schools are interested, because other schools talk about, if this guy can win at Vanderbilt, he can win here. So we got to make sure that we do what's necessary to keep him. Because, yeah, you can renegotiate a guy's contract, but if you can't bring in enough money, whether it be NIL, whether it be through rev share, to try to, you know, help him with his talent pool, that's a problem. Yeah. But, you know, Candace has done a good job of getting him to this point. Now it's the responsibility of the third party, in this case, Nashville Basketball Initiative, to get it to the next level. And I also want to think, you know, we've even got some board members that understand the third party initiative and what the responsibilities are, and how whether the school likes it or not, they need us, right?
Yeah, and you don't mean my message board. You mean board of trust, just to be
correct.
clear. And when I say board, it has a particular meaning on this show. Robert is furiously scribbling notes. Drew Maddox was worth a mention. We didn't get there. He was out of town. Drew used to do some stuff with us too. So maybe we can bring that back. But, yeah, they're cleaning up the gym. We probably need to get home.
They want us to.
Yeah, I think they do, which we need to anyway. But one thing on the
also, you got to understand something. 10:30 is late for me.
Well, me too, and I'll be up in the morning getting breakfast at 6 and packing school lunches for kids, but it was worth it to do this tonight.
It's a rough job.
Oh, and it's terrible. Midge asks about Mason Nicholson. Yeah, I kind of know what it is. I'll just put it this way. It's a minor health thing. I guess that's a good way to put it. Not like an injury, but just something he's getting through and nothing serious. So anyway, yeah, we're going to get out of here. We'll do this again. I don't know when, but hopefully.
I always enjoy it, my friend.
Yeah, me too. Hopefully, maybe around Thanksgiving or after. Maybe we can get one before. We'll see.
Absolutely.
But yeah, for Will Perdue, I'm Chris Lee of the Vandy 24/7 podcast. Thank you to our sponsors. Thank you to Wash House for sponsoring basketball season. Yeah, we appreciate you watching. God bless you. Have a great night. We'll see you again soon at the Vandy 24/7 podcast.